Hey friends, welcome to Midweek. We're glad that you're joining with us tonight. We hope that you had a great Labor Day weekend. Maybe you were able to take the day off work and you got to enjoy some peace and quiet or some time with your family. Maybe had a barbecue, whatever it was. We hope that you really enjoyed it, and just know that your work is never in vain. There is always a purpose for the things that you do, so make it matter. And so tonight we are continuing our series titled Righteousness, where we're just walking through how Jesus defines what it looks like to be righteous. And our theme verse for this series is Matthew 5:20, where Jesus himself says, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the Pharisees and scribes, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. So what does that look like? Well, we've been going through some sections that Jesus speaks on after he makes that comment. And so if you haven't been with us the last couple weeks, go back and check out those videos. But tonight we're going to talk about the concept of oaths. Now, we're going to be doing a new series soon this year on hermeneutics, what it looks like to interpret the Bible. And this principle is really going to come into play here as we unwind this idea of what it looks like to make an oath with people. But before we get there, let me just tell you a story that happened just maybe a week or two ago. I was really trying to figure out what we wanted for dinner that night. I come home from work, I pick the kids up. Jess isn't home from work yet, and we're just trying to figure out what do we want for dinner tonight. And just sometimes a nice cold cut sandwich just sounds good, right? So I run up to the store. I just buy everything. I get like 2 pounds of turkey, 2 pounds of ham, some cheese, it's like big loaves of Italian bread, all this stuff. Because if I'm going to make a sandwich, I want this baby to matter. You know what I mean? And so we get back home from the store. I make this gargantuan sandwich. It really wasn't too long, but it was a wide piece of Italian bread. It was awesome. And so I made it. It was pretty thick, but it had the lettuce, the tomato, all that stuff on there. And Grace comes up to me. She's my oldest daughter. She's 10. And she comes up and says, Dad, I don't think you could eat that whole sandwich. And I said, I bet you I can. And she goes, oh, yeah? And every time you say, I bet, my kids all of a sudden think that there should be something on the line. And so it's kind of my fault for provoking this. But I said, I bet you I can. And she goes, well, what do you want to wager on it? And I said, I don't know, what do you got? And so she goes to her piggy bank and she goes, I've got $2. I said, deal. And so I slaughtered the bet. And of course, as a good father should, I took her $2. Because one thing that I'm trying to teach my children is never make a bet or make an oath or a promise that you can't back up. Never do that. There's obviously biblical proof with why. God has a feeling about this, but it's just character that we're trying to build in our children. And so when they make a bet like that, for one, I make sure that they have the resources to make the bet or don't make the bet at all. And second of all, if I beat you, I plan to take what you bet. Now, of course, I'll give it back to her in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, I took her $2 and I finished that sandwich, and it was awesome. That's a whole different series right there. But Jesus comes and he talks about these ideas of oaths. So let's read what he says here, and then we'll talk about the truth that goes behind this. So it starts with Matthew chapter 5, verse 33. It says, again, you have heard it said in the days of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it's the throne of God, or by earth, for it's the footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it's the city of the great king. And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make a hair white or black. Let what you say simply be yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. And so here's the idea. This is where the hermeneutical methods will really come into play here, because in order to understand how we should interpret the scriptures, you need 3 chambers of idea here. You need historical, you need cultural, and you need theological. All of those understandings make up the trifecta of what we call context. And so in order to understand what Jesus is saying here, we have to go back and understand what this is. What is the historical context? What is the theological context here? What's the historical truth that's moving into it? And what can we gather from knowing all these things? And so Jesus speaks about this quite often, actually. And it's also in the Old Testament where you hear these things about taking oaths in the name of the Lord. Do not swear falsely against God's name. In fact, the Jews, even the Jews of today, take the name of God so seriously that they won't even spell out his name fully. When they write out God, they write G-D. They won't even put the O in there because they don't want to misuse or misrepresent the name of God. I could respect that, right? But the way we do this in modern days, we may not swear on God because quite frankly, most of us don't care how God feels about his name. We throw his name around loosely all over the place. But we'll make bets and we'll make dares and we'll make challenges with people, but we do this. Right? We cross our fingers. And so we hide it behind our back, or we say, I bet you can't do this, or if you do this, I'll give you $100. But we have our fingers crossed, which in some way voids out the bet for some reason. I don't know who created that. I don't know why we buy into it, but that's just the way it is, right? And so that's kind of what's going on here. But back in the day, how the Jewish culture would do these things is they would make deals and make oaths and barter with each other by swearing and invoking some sort of deity. Because in that culture, not just in the ancient Near East, but even in the first century here, that's how they would barter with each other. And no deal, no oath was binding unless you invoked some sort of deity. Because they had this belief that if you make an oath or you swear on something invoking a God's name, if you didn't follow through with what you said you would do, there would be repercussions from the God that you invoked into that promise. And so if you were to swear on God's name, whether it be Jehovah, whether it be Baal, whether it be whoever, whatever God you're invoking into the deal, they would then in turn punish you if you didn't follow through with whatever you agreed to do so. So any oath that was taken would only be taken seriously if you invoke the name of God. Now, here's where things get twisted. You know, we do the whole finger twist. What the Jews would do is they would start swearing on other things like Jerusalem or on heaven, right? Even their own head. But because they didn't invoke the name of God, when people would come and collect their debt, they would say, wait a minute, I never invoked the name of God. I never invoked this. I swore on Jerusalem, so it never counted. Or I swore on heaven, so it never counted. Or I swore on my own life, therefore it never counted. See where the deity comes and makes a part in this? So now you have Jews and Gentiles and everybody all over the place just swearing left and right on gods, and God is getting sick of it. And so Jesus is sitting here saying, let's correct the standard right now. You shouldn't be invoking the name of God on any of your bets, on any of your oaths, on any of your promises. Because if you're going to follow me and you're going to be one of my disciples, you should simply let your yes be yes and your no be no. The way that you conduct your character and how you live your life should be testament enough to know that you're someone who can be trusted. So you don't need to swear by heaven, by earth, by Jerusalem, by even your own head, because your character should be in such good standing with people that when you say you'll be somewhere, when you say that you'll do something, they can already count that you'll be there. That should be enough testimony for people to rely on you. And if you're living in such a way where your character is being questioned, where people can't depend on your reliability, if you're not doing what you said you would do, if you're not showing up at the times that you said you would be there, if you're not communicating effectively what you claim to be able to do, that becomes problematic, because not only are you squandering your character with the people who you should be witnessing to, essentially, you're also making the name of God look poorly upon those who are trying to be righteous. And so Jesus says, if you want to live with integrity, if you want to live with this idea of righteousness, it has to start with you being where you say you'll be, doing what you say you'll do, and following up with the plans that you've committed for yourself. Let people see who you are through your actions, through your character, and stop making oaths and stop making promises, invoking the name of God for reasons that are just ignorant, quite frankly. Simply let your yes be yes and your no be no. Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you next time.